Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Super glad to have you all here, and I'm going to talk about the subject that I really wanted to talk about for quite a long time, because honestly I'm quite worried about what's happening to the world and the issues that have been kind of bothering us all, that have been reaching their peak, I think, at the moment. And honestly, at this point I'm kind of concerned and worried about what's going to be happening with humanity. And obviously me being part of this world and living in this world and hoping to live for a very long time, I am kind of worried about what kind of world is awaiting us in the future and what's going to be happening. And what's been happening, I think, since COVID hit, it's a lot of issues that have been kind of there became so big that I think we couldn't ignore them anymore. And now at this point, it's like you see the world reacting to them, which is like a totally normal thing. And what if the reactions are actually wrong? And I worry a lot if these reactions to these issues are right or wrong. Let me kind of go a bit deeper into the problem, so maybe you can understand me a tiny bit better. But I was born in 80s, so I was born in 1986, and born to a family where there was a lot of issues. My parents were like a traditional psychopath victim. Role play. That wasn't role play, that was actually my reality, and I've been traumatized a lot. And thank God I went through a lot of therapy, and here I am capable of living like let's say a normal person. And what was very important for me when I was growing up is the women's rights, of course, and we did fought for them quite a lot, and it was all about breaking the tradition. And I think that went really good. Like, I remember the 90s and the early 2000s being like an amazing time to be alive. And then something happened. And I find myself often thinking about what happened. And I got to a couple of conclusions, and maybe I want to share that with you, and you can tell me what you think about that. So in the early 90s and 2000s, it was all about breaking tradition. Tradition had a lot to do with religion, and in a way I was quite a lot against Christianity, because I blame Christianity for ruining my mother's life. And to kind of elaborate on that, she was very religious, and partly the reason why she never divorced my father was because she went to priests for advice, for marriage advice, and the priest would always say that the marriage is the most important thing to save, and it doesn't matter how much you suffer, but the marriage has to be, kept. It's the most sacred thing, and divorce is actually, it does not exist in the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church does not allow divorce. That's why, Protestant church now exists. And, so I was growing up with a big hate towards Christianity, towards structure, towards everything, and there was a reason for it, right? It wasn't like that people wanted to fight against these things for nothing, for no reason, because they were oppressing us. And that was a very important thing to remember when thinking about left and right nowadays. So the structure, the religion, the tradition was oppressing us. And a lot of people were living in situations where they were not really happy. Women couldn't decide, they make decisions regarding their bodies. There was a lot of arranged marriages. Even in the time of my grandmother, a lot of marriages were either someone got pregnant and then you had to marry, because it was shameful, or, there was a lot of things that we needed to fight against because they were so oppressive towards our freedom and towards, the freedom for our expression, the freedom to be unique, to be an individual. And I was very passionate about that. And even just like trying to discover who I am and, going through therapy, I had a phase where I wanted to break away from traditional marriage and to date more people and to explore my sexuality. I think this is very important. All of this was super important. But it got to the point, and this is what happens to humanity all the time, and I think this is so destructive. It went too far. And then what I noticed in the last 10 years, there was this big rise in trying to fight for diversity, for, equality. But it wasn't anymore like we're gonna just live our truth. It became aggressive. I think this became a huge problem. But if you try to force humanity and put on aggression towards them in any way, they will resist. That's why your government, that's why your church, they always try to actually work around other things. So religion try to work around with guilt, and politicians are, going to give you illusion of choice. But whenever people are truly oppressed, when they feel oppressed and that something is shoved down their throats, they will start resisting it. And this happened actually with the whole woke movement, which was, I would say, far left. And even though the ideas behind might be valid ones, what happened, people started rejecting it because it was forced upon them. And there was a lot of problems here, like you can't hire people because they're of certain, skin color or a certain sexuality. It has nothing to do with the work that's being, given. And I do get it, because through centuries, white people did have a lot of privileges and they had a lot of opportunities. But you also have to remember that it wasn't all of us. And there's a lot of white people out in this world that actually started with nothing. For example, like if you look at the entire Eastern Europe, people there still live in awful conditions with no money, no resources, no chances to do anything in their life. And maybe you wouldn't compare that to life in very poor areas in Africa, but it's not a privileged life. So there was a lot of mistakes that happened here, and always trying to generalize things and trying to act justly, act just in situations like this, you end up doing more wrong than right. And that's what I've been seeing around me. I've been in a company that they would look at their workforce and they would be like, oh, we need more women. And the sad part about this was the company was a retail company and they hired more women and there was no one to do manual labor anymore, or that manual labor was forced upon women, which nobody wanted. There was a lot of physical injuries and so coming from a point where, this might sound just and it might sound like something that is correct, politically correct, but it's wrong. It's wrong. It just doesn't work. And I've seen tons of this, where things just didn't work. And this is what, when you go too far left and you start almost like kind of living in your dreams, in your fairy tales, ignoring reality, you make a lot of mistakes. And it's not from a place where you want to be a bad person. It's like utopia that we all want to live in is not possible at the moment. So going too far left will bring us too far right again. And it's happening. And guys, it's happening. And this is also not good because this is a pendulum swing. So we were too far off right, and now the pendulum is too far off left, which is causing a lot of problems, because being left sometimes means not being able to make difficult decisions because they're very morally responsible. So if you make a decision, for example, to not accept refugees in your country, you might seem as a bad person to some, but you also might seem as a savior to others, because other people want, safety for their children. They want, plenty of jobs, cheap housing. So in these situations, like, being on the left sometimes means not making a decision, but also not making a decision is harmful. I've seen more and more of that in the world, and it's really, really, it's frightening me, to be honest with you. There was a lot of things that the left had right. There was a lot of things that in the long run would make so much sense and would naturally happen. But because left pushed so hard, and because left tried to, make people change immediately, it just didn't work. It just didn't work. I know with my father got to some conclusions by himself. For example, in Croatia, gay rights are not incredible at the moment. I know people are not gonna, persecute you or kill you over it, but it's still it's still difficult to talk about it in Croatia, and especially with the generation of my father, which these are people now in their late 70s. And he told me one day that he was having a chat with his friend, and his friend said that he would smack a gay person if he could. And my dad was like, but what if this person was your grandchild? And the guy was like, oh, but I wouldn't smack my grandchild. And he was like, but why would you smack someone else's grandchild? So these kind of subtle changes are things that change the world in the end. I think that in many ways that we need to seriously start implementing these things through empathy, not through force. The force will never work. You see what's happening in video games and in movie culture. It's like people don't want to watch this. Why? Because it's being shoved down their throats. Because there is only one purpose behind these movies or these video games, is to spread the woke agenda. People don't like that. Why don't we do things through real empathy? And this is the thing, I've seen a lot of YouTubers saying that the whole woke agenda, it feels like someone is talking down on them. And whenever you talk down on a person, that person will rebel. That's just what happens. So instead of doing that, why don't you try to do something through empathy? It's like, I see what place you're at, and I have empathy towards you, and I will try to explain this from a position of heart. So I think the left made a huge mistake in trying to force things down people's throats, while they're also struggling with high prices, complete impossibility to buy a property, grocery shops, prices of food skyrocketing, prices of healthcare going up. And then, you have people telling them that we're living in a utopia and that this reality in this world is just, and we should all do everything, morally right. People don't want that. They're hungry, They want someone that will promise them change. And this is where we went wrong. And now I see we're going back to the right. But there was a reason that we moved away from right. But there's also another huge problem with moving away from right. It's leaving religion and not having any substitute for it. people, normal people, like your normal, don't know, they need something to believe in. They need something to live their life for. And we gave them nothing. We gave them this culture of infinite consumption, which leaves them empty and unsatisfied. And now we're like, oh, what happened? Well, what happened? You gave them nothing, to live for. So they will go back to the right. There was also another thing. You destroy their family. Humans are a social species. We can't forget that. We mustn't forget that, which is very important. We like to socialize. We like to be in groups. We like to have someone to rely on and to love. And the first thing what left did is started destroying family. And this won't work. I am actually quite against that. Family is very important. And I know a lot of us have been traumatized through family and traumatized through watching our parents' marriages fail and traumatized through, like living an awful, awful, awful life with our parents. But instead of rejecting that, we should make our own family. But we failed to do that as well. So what's going to be happening in the future? What I expect is that the right will continue rising and will start getting stronger and stronger, for the good or bad. The good part about the right is that it will start making decisions that are not going to be great for everyone, but will be probably great for majority of people. The other thing, what's going to happen, we're going to be seeing a rise in people going back to religion because they feel lost. But also what's going to be happening is that the rich people will get richer. What's going to be happening with the left? A lot of people, because the woke people did it wrong, are going to start losing their rights. And this is going to be bad. But I do have hope. I always have hope in humanity, and I think we need to go back to center. This is something we never did before. We are really lacking is the real spirituality and finding new religion. When you look at the religions, and the only religion that doesn't have this aggression in its core is Buddhism and Hinduism. It's the old religions where, the goal is to work on yourself, to perfect yourself, and to achieve some kind of level of, enlightenment. And I think this would be a good substitute for religion in the West, is going back to self-improvement and working on yourself and, working on your spirituality. But we'll see. I say at this point, I am trying to be optimistic, but I'm very worried. So everyone, I hope you have a lovely new year, and I'll be seeing you all soon.